Hey guys, welcome to this week's Devo. I'm so glad that you stopped by. We're going to jump into this week's Devo with a couple of questions. So the first question is, when I say the word salvation, what's the first thing that comes to mind? You got it? Okay, so the second question is a little bit narrower. When we think about salvation, do you generally think of salvation as being saved from something or being saved for something? Now let that question sink in a little bit and really think about what your perception is, your answer. Are we saved from something or for something? What do you think about more? Both are true, but which way do you think about it more? Because how you think about what has happened to us in the salvation process can really affect how we live the rest of our lives. And to draw an analogy out, we're going to go back into the Torah, or in Hebrew, the instructions. Most of us call it the law, but actually the proper terminology is the Torah. It's God's instructions. We're going to go into Exodus chapter 21. We're going to read verses 1 through 6. And this is just right after Exodus 20, where God gives the 10 Commandments to the nation of Israel. And this is called the law of the slave. Now you may be wondering what this has to do with salvation, but I want to bring out a couple things to help you think about this throughout this week. So we start in verse 1. These are the regulations, or the requirements, that you must present to Israel. Verse 2, if you buy a Hebrew slave, he may serve no more than 6 years, and you set him free in the 7th year, and he will owe you nothing for his freedom. If he was single, when he became your slave, he shall leave single. But if he was married before he became a slave, then his wife must be freed with him. Verse 4, if his master gave him a wife when he was a slave, and they had sons and daughters, then only the man will be free in the 7th year, but his wife and children will belong to his master. Verse 5, but the slave may declare, I love my master, my wife, and my children. I don't want to go free. If he does this, his master must present him before God. Then his master must take him to the door or doorpost and publicly pierce his ear with an awl. After that, the slave will serve his master for life. So what does this have to do with salvation? Well, remember the first two questions we asked. The law of the slave is a really powerful principle here in Exodus 21. It is the foundation for what we think of as salvation, in my opinion. So what you have is someone here called a man or woman, a servant, who is in debt. They're in over their heads. This happens because sometimes we make bad choices, or maybe because life just got away from them. Maybe the crop that they planned to sell didn't come in, or maybe business tanked and didn't do well, or just a variety of reasons. They were in debt. And the debtors were calling. People were calling. People that had the ability to hound and frustrate and really manipulate and take hold and put in bondage the man or the woman who was in debt. They had an ability to put you in bondage. So the servant goes to a master, which is someone with some wealth and prestige in the community, a leader in the community, and the master and the servant would make an agreement where the servant would agree to work for the master for 6 years, and in return for that, the master would cancel and pay all the debts, thereby releasing him, the servant, from the bondages of those debt collectors. And so there's a relationship that establishes there. Now, here's where the first part of my question comes in. I can imagine some of these conversations going on like this. Hey, look, I'm in debt. I'm in over my head. You have the ability to help me. I'm going to commit myself to you for 6 years, and there needs to be no relationship. I don't want to get close to you. I just want my debt paid. I just want to get out of trouble and do my time and serve you in your household for 6 years, and then we'll walk away and it'll be done. Do you know anybody that's ever come to salvation in Yeshua like that? Listen, I realize my sin. I realize I'm in trouble, but I don't want a whole radical life-changing thing. I just want to be released from the curse of sin, or I just want to be released from the promise of an eternal separation from God if I'm not saved, if I don't apply the blood of Messiah to my life. You ever know anybody like you may have come to Jesus like that. Many people do. We don't want the whole package. We just want to be cleared from our debt. We just want to be saved from something. We just want to be saved from a negative. Verse 5 is an incredible verse. It says that the servant may declare, I love my master and my wife and children. I don't want to go free. If you think about slavery through our modern Western perception of slavery, you will overlay a different meaning on this passage than what is biblically deemed as slavery. And that can be very dangerous. And so we have to read it in the context in which it was written. This was not slavery like what so many endured in our recent history. This is not slavery like we think about it. This is two different things. Number one, this is a part of God's welfare system. In our communities, in our atmospheres, in the circles we run in, there's always going to be people that are less fortunate than us. God's plan was never to send them to the church building, or was never to send them to a ministry, or to send them to a governmental agency that could help them and that could hand something out to them. God's plan was always for a believer who was prosperous, who was blessed, to take that person in and to take them on the road to recovery. That was God's design for us to take care of each other. That was always his plan. It reminds me of one of the commandments that Jesus reminded us of. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? So it's number one, part of God's welfare system. Number two, this is the greatest evangelism plan ever on the face of the earth. There's something that happens whenever someone lives in your house, or when you do life with someone in a deep and meaningful relationship. When you walk through life and you walk through the high points and low points with somebody, there's something that happens when they see your faith and they see your passion for God modeled every day, every moment of the day. When you treat people justly, when you are passionately and vehemently sold out for the Lord, something happens to a person that you're doing life with when that happens. This plan of evangelism to show the world, one person at a time, how awesome God truly is more powerful than any tract we've ever handed out, more block parties that we've ever done, maybe even sometimes more effective than any church service we've ever invited anyone to, because it's a one-on-one real relationship. It's living the gospel every moment of the day for somebody to see. So the master would take the servant to the city gates before the judges and before the elders, and they would hear testimony. And if the testimony was found to be good, then the master would put the servant's ear on the doorpost and pierce it through with an awl as a sign that this man or woman was forever to be the servant of this master. Now, this reminds me of Jesus and Paul, all through the New Testament, their statements encouraging masters to be good to their servants. Why? Because they are the picture of God. They are the picture of the Redeemer. They are the picture and the prototype of Christ. And so that mark, that awl through the ear is a mark. You know, you and I are marked as well. We're marked with the blood of Yeshua, of Messiah. And we're marked with Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, the presence of God in our lives that we are marked with. You know, one of the interesting things is that as a servant, if you were in the marketplace, you were in the city, and you were assaulted or you were, damage came to you, you were legally not allowed to stand up for yourself. Your legal obligation was to go to the master, to your master, and he had complete authority to deal with your attacker, the person that assaulted you. Only he could do that because you are not your own. You're his. And he has the responsibility to take care of you. So going back into my other question, what is salvation to you? Number two, are we saved from something or for something? Many of these people came to a master to be freed from their debt. But many of them, after serving for 6 years, realized that they had been saved not from something only, but for something. And they saw so much in the master that they wanted to be just like him. They wanted to eat what he ate. They wanted to work like he worked. They wanted to have the attitude that he had. They wanted to worship his God. They wanted to passionately do life like their master did. And so the last question I have for you before we wrap up, and I know this has been a little long, but it's such an awesome topic. The last question I have for you before we leave is, how does your view on salvation affect your relationship with God and with other people? Do you live every day in a concept that you've been saved from something? Or do you live every day with the understanding that you have been saved for something? Because God did not save us from hell for heaven, but He saved us from sin to be disciples. So I want you to chew on that this week. Go back and read through those first few verses of Exodus chapter 1 and just chew on it. And think about how your view of salvation affects the trajectory of your life. If you're saved from something, then it's kind of like hey, I got my debt paid, I'm getting to heaven, that's all I'm really worried about, I'll go do my own thing. But for a true disciple, someone who is truly following in the footsteps of Yeshua, they realize that they've been saved for something, and that their whole passion, their whole life's purpose is to make the name of their master great and to give him the best reputation that they can. So I hope you guys enjoyed this week's Devo. Don't forget to check us out next week for another one. Drop by the website at outofashesministries.org to find more free teachings. Like us on Facebook and subscribe right here on YouTube. Giving us a thumbs up would also really help. And we love you guys and we're praying for you. We are so glad and so honored to be doing life with you. So have a great week and God bless.